The text came in at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. I know the exact time because I just finished charting my last patient note and was about to put my phone face down on the break room table when the screen lit up. My mother's name. I almost didn't open it. We'd had a rough few weeks. The kind where every conversation ended with someone hanging up first, and I was tired. I was always tired back then. But I opened it. We've talked it over, all of us. You've made your choices and so have we. You're not our daughter anymore. Don't contact us. I read it 3 times. Then I read it a 4th time, very slowly, the way you read a lab result that doesn't make sense. I kept waiting for a follow-up message. This isn't what I meant, or even just a question mark. Something that meant it wasn't real. Instead, my brother liked the message. Not a typo. He actually hit the heart react on the text that said I was no longer part of the family. My brother, who I had driven to soccer practice every Thursday for 3 years when our parents were too busy. My brother, who I had lent $6,000 to pay off a credit card debt he never mentioned to anyone else. He hearted it. I sat in that break room for 4 minutes. I know because the clock on the microwave was directly in my eye line. 4 minutes of absolute silence. Just me and the hum of the vending machine and the distant sound of a monitor beeping somewhere down the hall. Then I picked up my phone and opened my banking app. I am a CPA. I have been one for 9 years. People hire me because I am precise, because I understand exactly how money moves and where it hides and what happens when the paper trail goes cold. My family knew this about me. They had been using it for years. What they didn't understand, what they had never once stopped to consider, is that precision works in both directions. The first thing I did was pull up the joint household account, not mine alone. The account I had opened 3 years ago at my mother's request. The one I funded every month to cover the property taxes on the house I grew up in. The one in my stepfather's name in a neighborhood that hadn't appreciated in value since 2009. I had been depositing $1,100 into that account every month. Automatic transfer, first of the month, quiet as a habit. I changed the transfer amount to 0. It didn't trigger any alerts, no emails, no confirmations sent to anyone but me. As far as the account was concerned, I had simply stopped. The property tax payment was due in 6 weeks. They would find out when the county sent the delinquency notice, not before. Next was the subscription bundle. Years ago, when streaming services started multiplying, my mother had asked me to set up a family account. Said she didn't trust putting her card online. So my card was the one on file. 4 services, $73 a month combined, spread across 4 different apps. I didn't cancel any of them. Canceling would have sent confirmation emails. Instead, I updated the billing email in each account to an address they'd never seen. Then I let the cards expire on their own billing cycles. The last thing I did that night was open the shared document folder. My stepfather had asked me, 2 years prior, to organize all the family's financial records, mortgage statements, tax returns, insurance policies, into a shared drive folder so everything was in one place. I was the one who built the folder. I was the one who maintained it. I was the administrator. I removed their access. Then I drove home. My apartment was quiet. I made chamomile tea. I didn't drink. Sat at my kitchen table and started a document on my laptop. Not a journal. I am not a journal person. It was a spreadsheet. 2 columns. What I had given, what I had received in return. By the time I finished, it was almost 2 a.m. Column 1 was long. The house. I had covered the property tax bill twice when my stepfather was between jobs. $4,300 the first time, $4,700 the second. I had paid my mother's car insurance for 14 months after my stepfather's policy lapsed, and the renewal quote came in higher than expected. I had co-signed on a personal loan my stepfather took out to repair the roof, a loan that, according to the credit bureau, I was still technically liable for. I had filed my mother's taxes for free every April for 7 years. I had set up a small business LLC for my brother when he decided he was going to flip houses. Paid the state registration fee, and spent 12 hours building him a basic bookkeeping template he used exactly once. I had given them, in total, somewhere north of $67,000 over a decade. Column 2 was short. A birthday card with a Walmart gift card inside, $25 when I turned 30. A fruit basket when I had my appendix out in 2021. A voicemail from my mother last Christmas saying she was proud of me, which I had saved and listened to more times than I would like to admit. I closed the laptop. I was not sad. That surprised me. I thought I would be sad. What I felt instead was something close to clarity. The kind that comes after a long audit when the numbers finally reconcile and you understand exactly where every dollar went and why nothing ever added up. I went to bed. The next morning, my phone looked like I had gone viral overnight. 17 missed calls. 9 voicemails. A string of texts from my brother that started with, "What did you do?" and escalated from there. One text from my mother that simply read, "Call me right now." And one from my stepfather that I almost deleted before I realized what it said. "You have until end of business today to restore everything, or I'm going to your employer and telling them you've been embezzling from clients. I'll make sure you lose your license. I'll tell them whatever I need to. You know I will." I set the phone down on the counter. In accounting, we have a term, material misstatement. It means a lie big enough to change the conclusions someone would draw from the information in front of them. What my stepfather had just put in writing was a material misstatement. And unlike a verbal threat, a written one has a timestamp. I forwarded the text to my personal email. Then I took a screenshot and saved it to 2 separate cloud folders. Then I called my lawyer. Her name is Renata. She has represented me since I started my own practice 4 years ago. She answered on the second ring, listened without interrupting while I read her the text, and then said, very calmly, "Don't respond, don't call them back. I'll send a cease and desist by noon." She did. My stepfather did not contact my employer. He did not file any complaints. Because Renata's letter arrived with a copy of the text he sent, a notation about the legal definition of defamation, and a reminder that filing a false report with a professional licensing board is itself a criminal offense in our state. The letter was 2 pages. It was, in Renata's words, just enough to make him understand the math. He understood the math. For 3 weeks, I heard nothing. Then my grandmother called. My grandmother on my mother's side, I called her Grandma Ruth, was 81 years old and had lived in the same house in western Pennsylvania for 53 years. She was the kind of woman who remembered every birthday without writing them down and kept a ceramic cookie jar shaped like a barn on her kitchen counter, and had an opinion about everything that she would share with you directly, whether you asked or not. She called from her landline, which she still had, because she did not trust cell towers. "I heard what happened," she said. "I figured you would. Your mother's version or the real one?" I left. I hadn't left in 3 weeks. We talked for an hour. At the end of the call, she said, "I need you to come visit soon, sweetheart. There are some things I want to show you." She paused. "And some things I want to tell you before someone else gets the chance to tell you their version." I drove out the following weekend. Her house smelled like it always had, old wood and coffee and something baking. She met me at the door and hugged me the way she always did, with both arms like she was making a point. We sat at her kitchen table with coffee and a plate of oatmeal cookies, and she slid a manila envelope across the table toward me. "Your grandfather and I talked about this for a long time," she said. "He updated everything before he passed, and I updated mine last year. I want you to know what's in it." I opened the envelope. My grandfather had died 6 years ago. I had known, vaguely, that he had left some assets to my grandmother and that she had her own plans for the eventual distribution. What I had not known, what no one in my family had apparently known, was the scope of it. My grandmother's estate included the house, paid off, valued at current market around $300,000. A brokerage account she and my grandfather had quietly built over 40 years, now worth just over $1.4 million. A CD ladder my grandfather had set up in the early 2000s. A life insurance policy. The total was $2.1 million. I put the papers down and looked at her. "I know," she said, and almost smiled. "Grandma Ruth, Does Mom know about your mother knows there's a will, she said. She does not know what's in it. And she will find out when she's meant to find out. She reached across the table and put her hand over mine. You're the executor, Nora, and the primary beneficiary. You have been for 4 years. Since right around the time you paid for your cousin's wedding flowers because your aunt said she was short and you never once mentioned it to anyone. I notice things, she added. I always have. I drove home in the dark. I didn't turn on the radio. 6 weeks after the text that started everything, my mother called again. Not from her usual number. From my brother's phone. I answered because I didn't recognize it. Nora. Her voice was different. The sharpness was gone. What was underneath it sounded like something I hadn't heard from her in a long time. The property tax is overdue. The county sent a notice. We got a letter. I know, I said. A pause. The streaming services stopped working. I know. What do you want? She asked. And underneath that question was the real question, which she would never ask out loud. How much will it cost to fix this? I had thought about this moment for 6 weeks. I had written out what I was going to say and then deleted it. Written it again. Deleted it again. In the end, what came out was simpler than anything I had prepared. I don't want anything, I said. You made your decision, I made mine. You're being dramatic, she said. And the sharpness came back, quick and automatic. You can't just, Mom. I said it quietly. I co-signed on Dad's roof loan. I'm still on the hook for that. My lawyer has already sent the lender a letter documenting the circumstances. When you refinance, and eventually you're going to need to refinance, you'll need to deal with that. I'd suggest getting ahead of it. Silence. I hope you're all okay, I said. And I meant it, which surprised me. But I'm not available for this anymore. I hung up. I sat on my couch for a long time after that. My apartment was quiet in the way apartments get quiet when you've been living alone long enough to stop noticing it. Outside, a car passed. Someone's dog barked once and stopped. I thought about the version of myself that existed before that Tuesday night in the break room, the one who would have called back immediately, who would have driven over with a check, who would have smoothed everything over and told herself it was fine and filed it away in the part of her brain where she kept all the other things that were not fine, but that she had decided to manage quietly. That version of me was very organized. She kept excellent records. She was good in a crisis. She was also exhausted in a way that had stopped feeling like exhaustion and had started feeling like weather. Just the permanent condition of existing in her own life. I didn't miss her. 3 months later, I sat in Renata's conference room with a notary and 2 copies of a document that officially named me executor of my grandmother's estate, alongside the updated will she had filed with her own attorney. Grandma Ruth was there too, in a blazer she said she'd had since 1987, eating a granola bar from her purse and mildly terrorizing Renata's assistant with questions about parking validation. The family found out about the will on a Thursday. I know this because my brother texted me at 4:17 p.m. that day. The text was long. It used the word unfair 4 times and shopped twice and ended with she was clearly being manipulated. I read it once and put my phone in my desk drawer. My mother called the following morning. I let it go to voicemail. She did not leave one. My stepfather called Renata's office and asked to speak to someone about contesting the will. Renata's assistant took a message. Renata called him back herself, which she normally doesn't do, but she later told me she had made an exception because she wanted to hear his reasoning firsthand. She said the call lasted 6 minutes and that he had not retained counsel. He did not pursue it further. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that my grandmother had anticipated exactly this. Her estate attorney had inserted a no contest clause with teeth. Anyone who challenged the will without clear legal standing and lost would forfeit any residual bequests they might otherwise have received. My stepfather's name had appeared in the will for a single item. My grandfather's old woodworking tools, which my stepfather had mentioned once years ago that he admired. By making the call, he had already disqualified himself. My grandmother, when I told her what had happened, looked unsurprised. I've known your stepfather for 22 years, she said. He cannot resist free money or the sound of his own voice. I planned accordingly. I spent that Christmas at her house. She made her glazed ham and the green bean casserole that requires two separate pots and is completely worth it. And we watched old movies until midnight, and she fell asleep in her armchair with a blanket over her legs, and I sat in the quiet and thought about how rooms can feel completely different depending on who's in them. My apartment had started feeling different too, bigger somehow, even though nothing had changed. I had started keeping the blinds open in the mornings. Small thing. It made a difference. The property where I grew up was eventually listed. I saw it on a real estate app, not looking for it, just browsing, the way you sometimes do on Sunday evenings. The photos showed new staging furniture, light fixtures that weren't there when I was a kid, a fresh coat of gray paint on the shutters. The asking price was $287,000. It sat on the market for 11 weeks before they dropped it by $15,000. I don't know if it sold after that. I stopped checking. What I do know is that I am the one who paid the property taxes that kept it from going into delinquency the 2 times it almost did. I am the one who built the filing system that tracked every mortgage statement and insurance renewal. I am the one who, for a decade, made myself quietly indispensable so that my family could look financially stable from the outside while being held together with my invisible labor on the inside. And then one Tuesday night at 11:47, they decided they didn't need me. They were right, actually. They didn't need me. They needed what I provided. There is a difference. It took me a long time to learn it. I am not embarrassed that it took a long time. Some things only become visible when someone finally removes them. I'm not going to tell you that everything got easier immediately. It didn't. There were weeks where I sat in my car in the parking garage at work and just stayed there longer than I needed to. Not crying, not doing anything, just existing somewhere between the day I'd had and the apartment I was going home to. There were dinners I ate standing over my kitchen counter because sitting at the table felt too formal for one person. There were Sunday afternoons that had a particular kind of weight to them. But I am going to tell you this. I slept better. Starting almost immediately, I slept better. 8 hours, dark room, no 1 a.m. Scrolling, looking for messages I was dreading and also somehow hoping for at the same time. My work got better too. Clients noticed. One of them told me I seemed more focused. I said thank you and didn't explain. I still talk to Grandma Ruth twice a week. She still calls from the landline. Last month she told me she had signed up for a watercolor class at the senior center and that her instructor was extremely patient. Which is fortunate because I paint like a golden retriever. I laughed for a long time at that. Real laughing, the kind that catches you off guard. There is a photo on my desk now. Grandma Ruth and me at a 4th of July picnic, maybe 8 years ago. I'm in a lawn chair with sunglasses pushed up on my head and she's mid-sentence about something, gesturing with a plastic fork. We're both laughing. Neither of us is looking at the camera. I keep it there because it is the most accurate picture I have of what family actually looks like. Not a group text. Not a heart react. 2 people who show up, who notice, who remember. If you are someone who has been quietly holding up something heavy for a very long time, a household, a relationship, a family's financial fiction, I want you to hear this from someone who has run the numbers. The math never lies. You can keep subsidizing something that costs you everything and gives you nothing. You can keep making the transfers and filing the extensions and co-signing the documents and telling yourself it's family. So of course you do it. What else would you do? Or you can update the billing information. You can change who has access. You can stop the automatic transfer and let the notice arrive. And when it does, you can put your phone face down on the break room table and walk back out into the hallway and do the work that is actually yours to do. The account will still be there, but it won't be funding someone else's life anymore. And that, I promise you, is the beginning of a much more accurate ledger. I've thought a lot about what made my stepfather send that text. The one threatening my license, my career, the entire professional life I had built without a single dollar of help from anyone in that house. And I don't think it was cruelty exactly. I think it was panic dressed up as power. He had spent years watching me absorb every financial hit quietly, watching me show up and fix things and never once send an invoice. and he had confused my patience with weakness. That is an easy mistake to make about someone who never lets you see them sweat. What he didn't account for was the ledger. Not the one in my head, though I had been keeping that one for years. The actual one. The one I built in a spreadsheet at 2 in the morning the night everything fell apart, with 2 columns and a total at the bottom that made the situation very clear. When you work in numbers for a living, you understand something that people who don't work in numbers sometimes miss. The truth is always in the data. You can tell whatever story you want with words. The numbers will contradict you eventually. My family told a story where I was the difficult one, the one who left, the one who made things complicated and never appreciated what she had. They told that story to neighbors and relatives and probably to themselves, late at night when they needed it to be true. And maybe they believed it. People are remarkably good at believing the version of events that costs them the least. But the numbers said something different. The number said $67,000 over 10 years. The numbers said 14 months of car insurance and 2 rounds of property taxes and a co-signed roof loan I was still technically liable for. The numbers said I had been the load-bearing wall in a house that presented itself to the world as structurally sound. Here is what I have come to understand about that. Integrity is not about whether anyone is watching. I kept those accounts accurate, kept those payments going, showed up every April with my mother's tax documents. Not because I expected a return on the investment, but because I believed that was what you did for family. That belief cost me a great deal. I don't regret having it. I do think I applied it to the wrong people for too long. Grandma Ruth saw something in me that the rest of them had decided wasn't worth seeing. She noticed when I paid for my cousin's wedding flowers and said nothing. She noticed the way I showed up and handled things and moved on without making it about myself. She had been paying attention for years, quietly, the way I had been paying everything else. 2 people in the same family, noticing the same things, trusting the math. The resilience part, and I want to be careful here because that word gets used in ways that make it sound easy or even pleasant. The resilience part was not dramatic. It wasn't a single moment of standing up straight and deciding to be strong. It was 11 weeks of sleeping better than I had in years. It was eating dinner at my kitchen table instead of over the counter. It was a Sunday afternoon that felt like a Sunday afternoon instead of a waiting room. Small recalibrations. The body remembering what it feels like when it isn't constantly bracing. If you are carrying something heavy right now, something that you keep telling yourself is just what family means, I want you to run the numbers honestly, not emotionally, not the way you run them at 2 in the morning when guilt makes everything look different. Sit down with the actual data. What you give, what comes back, what it costs you to keep the account open. You are allowed to update the payment method. You are allowed to change the access settings. You are allowed to let the notice arrive and not be the one who fixes it this time. The math will tell you the truth. It always does.